Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's been a little while since our last podcast, but we are back. As your champion, you're all welcome for that. And you're all now looking in on the first dynasty for the League of Shadows. So, as you can hear, I do have Zach here with me. He's making the most noise, and I do have Tanner back there as well. How you doing, guys?
Great. Good.
All right. Well, before we jump into our abominable top 10 recap, because we did that guesstimation at the beginning of the season, I'm just going to throw a couple jokes out there. Are you ready?
Sure. Here we go.
All right. What's the difference between the Broncos and cigarettes?
I don't know. What?
Russell Wilson doesn't smoke cigarettes.
Ooh.
What's the difference between a Seahawks fan and a baby?
What, Jake?
The baby will stop whining after a while.
Yeah.
All right. What do you call 53 millionaires around a TV watching the Super Bowl? The New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
It's a valid personal.
All right. Two more. Why can't Minnesota Vikings players eat cereal for breakfast? Because whenever they get close to a bowl, they choke. All right. What does a Raiders fan do when his team's won the Super Bowl? He turns off his Xbox.
Nice. Suck on that, John and Eli.
Yeah, in your faces.
All right, so attached to this podcast recording email, I am going to have the top 10 for each position listed, and just initial impacts, fellas. Is there anything that, obviously, other than a couple weird scragglers, is there anything that's super disappointing or shocking? Tanner?
Well, I feel like Lamar Jackson was pretty shocking if you're talking about how things ended up. But, I figured he'd do well, but not that well.
Well, and Zach, as that Lamar Jackson owner, that is one of the highest. Have you seen that many points scored by a quarterback?
No, I didn't look, actually.
Well, he scored over 647 points, which, to put it in perspective, the top wide receiver was Michael Thomas at 339. Christian McCaffrey was at 518, and obviously the top tight end was only at 229. But
wow, yeah, and as the owner of the top wide receiver too, I sure fucking did awesome this year.
Well,
top wide receiver, top quarterback. I'm not bitter.
Well, looking,
but you didn't have the top 3 running backs on your team either, like some people. So,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like I said, you got a dynasty coming here, guys.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's you. That. You'll find a way to fuck it up.
Okay. Interesting stat for you. I heard just this the other day. So I know we had a little bit of contention in our last recording for the top 10 about where Odell Beckham was going to finish. As I recall, I did not even put him in my top 10. So suck on that. He did not finish in the top 10.
Did I? Where did I put him?
Tanner, you actually had him at number 7. You ranked him 7. Zach, you had him at number 5. He didn't hit my top 10, but he also did not hit the top 10 this year. Odell Beckham actually finished at, I believe it was 22nd overall.
But, I'm surprised it's even that high.
Yeah. Just to kind of put it in perspective, Michael Thomas outscored Odell Beckham when he just played at home. So in all the Saints games, Michael Thomas outscored Odell Beckham's entire season.
Well, when he's the only receiver that can catch the ball, what do you do?
That is true.
Yeah. But otherwise, if we're just going to mention the other top 10s, Patrick Mahomes, we all had him right near the top, and obviously that did happen. He was injured a little bit. Matt Ryan is always up there. Aaron Rodgers. Carson Wentz did pretty well, even though I feel like he's always hurt. And yeah. But otherwise,
I'm actually surprised he broke the top 10, to be honest, the way the season went.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, maybe one of you guys can correct me, is he, obviously he is that kind of injury prone. Has he ever been a top 10 fantasy quarterback, at least in your perspective, Zach?
I mean, fantasy-wise, yeah, I would say the year that he tore his ACL and the Eagles went on to win the Super Bowl without him, I mean, I'm pretty sure he was like 1 or 2. So, I mean, he has the talent, and I don't know. It is actually shocking that he broke the top 10 this year. I guess he was just one of those, like, steady, consistent guys, but never really had those big blow-up games.
Sure. Well, and I mean, I guess, Tanner, you've kind of had that same quarterback for the last 6 years, and Drew Brees being one of the most, I don't know, I'd say he's consistent. Like, you know what you get when you have him. Not always great, but he has that potential. On the other hand of that, with Carson Wentz, is injury prone something that we're just going to start to see regularly, or is it something, I mean, I don't know.
Well, at this point, you could definitely make an argument there's a pattern with Carson Wentz, unless you're talking Breeze. I mean, Breeze, that was the first time he's been this injured in his entire career. I mean, he hadn't missed a game in I don't remember how long, but and I will still maintain, call me a homer or whatever, but the fact I still maintain if he hadn't gotten hurt, he would have been top 10. But I mean, he was putting up those numbers when he was playing. So I mean, again, like you said, not blowing up every game or something, but he was consistent. But with Wentz, yeah, I think you could definitely argue there's a pattern, and I think he's got the team and the skill to continue to stay in the top 10. But yeah, it's all a matter if he can stay healthy, and he's officially kind of in that he may or may not category in my eyes.
Sure.
I always like to draw the distinction, though, with injury prone, and it's funny because me and Deshaun were actually talking about this. I think there's a difference between being injury prone and injury unlucky. I think of an injury-prone guy like Will Fuller, because you know the second he steps on the field and runs a route, he's going to pull his hamstring and miss 3 weeks. It's always the same injury with him. With Carson Wentz, it's been a broken back, a torn ACL, a concussion. I mean, those like just random injuries. I look at Keenan the same way. He tore his ACL. He lacerated a kidney. He had some sort of shoulder injury. Like, for a while, people were saying Keenan Allen injury prone. It's like, I get it. Like, he does get injured a lot, but it's more just unlucky than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a difference. You can say, I mean, Breida.
But either way, they're getting
he's
hurt.
injury prone.
Yeah.
Or gets some shit and will play, but whatever. But,
yeah.
All right, so for our other top 10 QB finishes, obviously there's Jackson, Prescott, Winston, Wilson, Watson, Mahomes, Ryan, Murray, Rodgers, and Wentz. Those were our top 10 finishers for QB. Is there anybody, I mean, obviously, outside of an injury, I imagine Jackson's probably going to be up there again. Prescott, Winston, I mean, as I recall, and Tanner, correct me if I'm wrong, is Russell Wilson seems to always be in the top 10. Is that what you saw too?
Yeah, as I recall, he every year he's for the past since 15. Yeah, he's been in it. He's 10 in 18. He was he was 1 in 17 and 9, 16 and 3 in 15. So he jumps from like 10 to 3 every year.
Pretty consistently. So otherwise, outside of these top 10, is there anybody you guys think? Zach, initial thoughts, do you think there's anybody that we should be seeing in the top 10 next season, or do you think somebody is going to come out of nowhere and jump in? I don't know.
There's always somebody that's going to come out of nowhere. I mean, had Ryan Tannehill have played all year, he probably would have been a top 10 quarterback. But I think he came in week 4 or 5, something like that. I mean, there's always 1 or 2 random people. I didn't think Kyler Murray was going to be a top 10 quarterback, but when you think about it, it makes sense. He was in that air raid offense, and you look at his stats, they're sort of underwhelming, but they translate fantasy-wise. So there's always going to be someone like that, but to try and pinpoint who it's going to be right now, that's a little tough.
All right. So then jumping over to the wide receivers, we'd mentioned Michael Thomas is up there at the top. There was Jones, Godwin, Hopkins, Galladay, Kupp, Lockett, Parker, Cooper, and Edelman. I'll be honest. I mean, obviously, I feel like Chris Godwin is the one that. I mean, him and Galladay. I wouldn't have expected. As I recall, they weren't in our top 10s. But is there anything else really surprising for you guys?
No, those were the main 2 for me. I mean, Devontae Parker just because the team's so bad, but he's always had the talent. So I guess you could maybe say he was a bit of a surprise, but again, just because the team's so bad, not necessarily because of him.
Yeah.
I think more of a surprise is who wasn't in there. And a lot of that had to do with injuries, either to the player themselves or their quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I think Juju Smith-Schuster. I know we all had him rated in our top 10s, I believe.
Yeah.
And when Roethlisberger went down, that just crushed his season. And then he got injured later. And so, yeah, I mean, guys like that. Of course, Odell, I still have faith in him. But, yeah, it was surprising that he couldn't even crack the top 10.
Yeah. Well, another one. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I just want to go back real fast of the QBs. If you want someone I would think that might show up there that a lot of people aren't seeing. I think if Minshew gets a job and he has the opportunity to spend the offseason working with the guys more and gets to hone it in a little more, I think he's a top 10 quarterback, no question.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those wild card guys that you could see jumping in there like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or something, because he's one of those guys who will throw for a ton of yards, but he'll also scramble. Not like he's the greatest athlete, but he'll get you 50 yards on the ground every now and then, and that fantasy, that really helps.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, didn't mean to get off track. I just had thought of that.
No, you're good.
It was a good point.
Yeah. No, because one of those that, as I was going over all of the, because I was looking through everybody's teams, looking at tenures, and that will be attached to this email as well. Somebody that I was surprised wasn't higher was somebody like DJ Chark, because I felt like at the beginning of the season he was just talked about constantly, but then obviously he did get injured as well. But it was one of those that, I mean, there are guys like Amari Cooper, Julian Edelman that were hurt, but they still managed to crack the top 10 here on our final finishes.
Yeah, Edelman is a very similar thing to Michael Thomas in that he's just the option. He was the only one that was clicking all season with Brady, so that's all he was going to go to, just like Breeze is only going to Thomas, really. Just the difference is a lot more passes are thrown in New Orleans and, for the New England. So. And
between Edelman and who was the other person that you just said? Cooper.
Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah, they had way more consistent quarterback play. I mean, Tom Brady didn't have a great year or anything, but he has that chemistry with Edelman. So Edelman, his points. Prescott, he's proven himself to be a very viable quarterback. So Cooper getting his points from him, and then you look at someone like DJ Chark. He had to play with the combination of Minshew and Nick Foles, and I don't think anybody's going to be really impressed with that. So, but he made the most of what he had, and he's young, and no one saw him coming. That was, even though he didn't crack the top 10, he's easily the biggest surprise at wide receiver for me this year.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
Yeah, makes sense. So I know, Zach, you always kind of pull for Odell, and we all mentioned Juju. There's a lot of talk for quarterback switch all around. I know one of the rumors right now is Brady to Indianapolis, and who knows what's actually going to happen. Is there somebody like T.Y. Hilton or Odell or Juju that we assume is going to just be a top 10 next year? Is Godwin going to fall out of graces there in Tampa, or what do you think?
I don't think Godwin's going anywhere. He's going to be a mainstay in the top 10 for years to come, especially if Bruce Arians is still the head coach in Tampa. I mean, the guy likes to throw the ball. Jameis Winston was throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game, and it's always to Evans and Godwin. So, yeah, I think Godwin's definitely staying there, and I think guys like if Ben Roethlisberger comes back next year healthy, Juju will probably be back in the top 10. I don't know about T.Y. because of his injury history. Mm-hmm. And even if Brady goes there, which I don't see. I mean, if Brady's not going to be in New England next year, he's going to be somewhere where his not Indianapolis. It would be a New York or a California team, something like that.
Why?
Not that I'm saying he's going to New York either, but
All right. Well, I mean, I'm just thinking like need. I mean, I don't know that he's going to necessarily go to somewhere like the Chargers or something like that. But if you're thinking like cap space, I mean, Indy looks pretty good.
Yeah.
So then,
Yeah.
I know
Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. I was going to jump over to Tyler Lockett here. He's one of those that I feel like.
I had some things to say about Tyler Lockett.
Oh, go for it.
No, it's not that. I'm waiting for him to flame out, but I was surprised, man. It's kind of a similar thing that we were just talking with the other guys. He's got the chemistry with Wilson, so he's going to get him. He's just being a height supremacist about it, but I just don't see him continuing to put up these numbers. But he's fast, so I don't know. But I feel like he's going to fall off this year, but he always proves me wrong. So I suppose.
Well, that's actually.
We should just stop thinking that way. But,
well, no, that's actually what I was going to ask, and maybe Zach, you can actually clue us in on this one as the resident Seattle truther there. Is DK Metcalf going to continue to cut into Tyler Lockett's role? Obviously, Tanner did mention the speed and the size. DK Metcalf kind of takes over both of those, at least in my opinion. I mean, is that going to be something that we're going to see more of a shared space between the two of them? Or, I mean, which way is that going to go?
I kind of see them more balancing each other out the more they play with each other. They were kind of playing similar roles, even though if you look at them, they're basically the exact opposite receiver. But they were just using their speed, basically, and then when they got to the red zone, the Seahawks were always targeting Metcalf or a tight end.
Yeah.
But Wilson has a very weird chemistry with Tyler Lockett. And as a Seahawks fan, I watch every game, and anytime the ball is in the air and for a long period of time, the first thought that goes in my head is, oh, that's going to Lockett, and no matter what, Lockett's going to catch it. And usually that's the case. There's some sort of weird chemistry between the two, so they actually kind of had a down year this year with each other, but I think some of that was working guys like DK Metcalf into the rotation. And I think it only goes up for both of them from here on out.
All right. Well, and we are going to move on here over to the running backs. Obviously, there's McCaffrey, Henry, Elliott, Jones, Chubb, Cook, Eckler, Barkley, Carson, and Ingram. I'm just going to throw it out there right off the bat. One of my biggest surprises here was Kamara. And Tanner, what the hell happened?
Yeah, dude. Well, definitely injuries. But, yeah, it was weird. After that injury, it just seemed like he couldn't get it going. And, I'd listened to a lot of people kind of talk and analyze what has happened with him. And it's just a down year. I do think he'll bounce back. But there is something to be said for his big thing was his balance and being able to just slip a bunch of tackles. And I think defenses just started figuring it out. They're like, just grab his feet. And so they started doing that more, and he wasn't slipping them as much. So I think he needs to make some adjustments. He definitely, ever since the injury that they kind of kept on the DL for a while, it was clear that he just wasn't right. He just wasn't nearly as explosive. His balance wasn't as good. He just didn't break 2 or 3 tackles every play like he always would. So it sucked to watch, but I do think he'll have a bounce back this next year.
Yeah. And how much of that is actually going to take away from Michael Thomas? I mean, because one would argue that if Kamara was kind of down and more of a distraction in a way, because he couldn't break all those tackles, Michael Thomas was propelled further. Is that going to have some kind of an impact there?
Yeah, I mean, it did when they were kind of getting equal share targets, as close as it can be between a running back and a wide receiver. But if you notice in any he ran, it was just they didn't trust him. I don't know if Sean Payton didn't trust him. I don't know if Drew Brees didn't trust him anymore. But every single play, they would have Kamara run out to one side, and Thomas would be doing the slot on the other, doing like a slant in the middle. And Brees wouldn't even look to the side with Kamara. He would always just look where Thomas was at. He wouldn't even even if Kamara was wide open on the other side of the field, he did. So there's some sort of trust issue or something there that was making it to where he wasn't even getting a look. So if he can get healthy, maybe rebuild some of that trust. I think it could definitely affect that, and I think it would just help both of them, though, because it's kind of like what Zach was saying about Lockett and Metcalf. I think that they pull coverage from each other, so if they're both fully functional, it's just going to help both of them, I think.
Yeah. Well, and another one that wasn't, another one that wasn't on here, and Zach, maybe you can speak more to this one. Obviously, Gurley was listed in, I believe, all of our top 10s. may have been 5 to 8 or something like that. But I mean, how much of that do you think was his injury kind of playing the same situation as Camaro? There was a lack of trust, and obviously I feel like it threw off Goff's game a little bit, not being able to have that. Obviously it didn't throw off Breeze, but I mean, is there some kind of a similarity there?
Yeah, I think Breeze was a little more glaring and obvious, though. He clearly was not healthy at the beginning of the year. He basically had a wasted first half of the year. And whether he was legitimately still hurt or they were just being extra cautious with him, it really ended up hurting the Rams in the long run. Mm-hmm. Because, like you said, Goff was very affected by that because his I don't know how you want his strength, I guess, is using the play action. Yeah. And when you know Gurley isn't getting the ball back there, it just throws everything off.
Yeah, you're not fooling anyone at that point.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously that was kind of the Titans' strength, and that's why we see Derrick Henry up there at number 2, which, by the way, I was a little surprised, Zach, that I thought you had kept him. For whatever reason, that was in my head, and so I thought he was on your team all year, but I'm looking at it, and Eli has him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he was a third-year player for me, and I couldn't keep him. I tried to trade him to Eli, and he turned it down. I tried to trade him straight up for O.J. Howard. So, kind of glad that didn't work out, but go figure, Eli ends up drafting him anyway.
Well, I mean, he was probably my biggest surprise of the season. I had never seen him as this just workhorse, bell cow, wear the defense down guy. Like, he was always just like, he was an upright runner, he's a big guy, but I just always saw him to get hurt because of the way he runs, and that guy, he blew me away. The way that there's no stopping him. And I was super impressed. Like, he was one that I did not see coming. Never thought he was a sexy runner or anything like that. And man, he was amazing this. He was that entire offense.
Yeah.
See, I knew he was going to have a great year, and I don't think I put him in my top 10 because I listened to a lot of experts, and I kept hearing everybody saying, he's going to be the one because he had a great year the year before. And they said, he's going to be the one that kind of falls off. He got hot at the end of the year, this and that. And I didn't buy it. I didn't want to. But when I came out with my rankings with you guys, I was like, well, I can't put him in my top 10. But I knew he was going to have a good year. For some reason, the fantasy community hates, probably not anymore, but they hate Derrick Henry. And it's because he's just a straight runner. He's not catching any passes. He's 6'3", 250 pounds. But think about that. 6'3", 250 pounds.
Right.
Who's going to want to tackle him?
Yeah. And boy, he would wear those defenses down, man. He would they wouldn't want to touch him by the end of the game. It was crazy to watch.
And Tennessee finally realized it, like, oh yeah, we do have this monster back here. Like, maybe we should just craft our offense into a run team. Like, sorry, Mariota, like we don't need you throwing the ball. Matter of fact, we don't need you on the field. Let's bring in Tannehill's old ass and then just hand the ball off to Henry and use that play action. Make A.J. Brown look good. Make Corey Davis still look like shit. But just hand it to Derrick Henry.
Oh, man, speaking of Corey Davis, talk about disappointment. Man, I always thought he would be great. And just, wow, what a disappointment.
He was overdrafted in real life.
Clearly.
So 2 others on this list that I want to point out before we kind of jump on is obviously I feel like Eckler I drafted him and then traded him away, so I knew he was going to be, great. But he is there on the top 10, as well as...
Yeah, he was a pretty big surprise, too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't expect him to do that well. I feel like everybody expected Gordon to kind of come back and take some of that glory.
Right.
But it obviously didn't really happen.
It did for a little bit in the second half. Gordon started getting more touchdowns, but the Chargers were so bad that they were behind all the time, and that's Eckler's game, is catching passes. He'd catch 7 to 10 passes every game.
Yeah,
and he looked better as a straight runner too. I gotta give it to him. He was bowling guys over and stuff that I really hadn't seen as much from him. I mean, that's still not really his game, but he did way more of it than I had expected or ever seen out of him before. Like, I don't know. I guess maybe just given the right opportunity, and he just did it. But
yeah, he definitely upped his game, and Gordon looked like crap when he first came back. But like I said, he finally got it going. But yeah,
I think we'll see better days out of Gordon.
Depends who he's playing for. next year.
True.
Yeah. I think some of Eckler, too, though, was, at least in previous seasons, he's always kind of had a little bit of that injury, a little bit of an injury history, and I feel like that was kind of one of the fears that everybody thought is by the time Gordon came back, he was either going to be injured or right on the cusp, and so they'd try to rest him. But that never really happened either.
Yeah,
no?
It's true. Yeah, he always had some issue that would take him out. Yeah.
Which actually brings me to my next person. There on our number 9 finish of the season for running backs is Chris Carson, who's another one that I always feel like is popping up on every injury report, and yet here he is on our top 10.
Fumble.
Yeah, he would be a lot higher if he didn't fumble in like 5 straight games. But yeah, and he's one that you might consider injury prone. Granted, his injuries have been different. I think what was it, last year he broke his ankle or his foot or something like that, and then this year it was his shoulder. You'd think as a Seahawks fan I would know, but
yeah, and I honestly don't remember. So
at a certain point when your favorite team is down to 4th string running back and a guy that they brought out of virtual, you just kind of don't really give a shit anymore.
Again, I'll give it to him, man. The fact that they stayed in as long as they did without losing their running backs like that, I'll give them credit. They stuck it out still.
Yeah, they did.
Marshawn didn't look too bad.
Oh, he looked like garbage. That Green Bay game.
For his age, and
his age, he's a year older than me.
Well.
So I guess, yeah, I'm old. I get it, but no, I don't know how to work Skype either. No, that Green Bay, the playoff game. If I watched him take a handoff and run into the ass of one of his linemen one more time, I was gonna throw my remote through the TV. That was getting old. Play. It was. I don't know if Marshawn must be a backdoor man because he was really getting into his left guard's ass.
It's accurate.
All right. On that note, we're going to jump over to tight end.
Speaking of,
outside of, I feel like Kelsey, Kittle, then it goes Waller, Andrews, Ertz, Hooper, Cook, Higbee, Henry, Goddard, and we're not going to stay long on this because I feel like once you get past 5, it's a crapshoot. But I mean, with the emergence of especially Waller and Andrews. Are we seeing the emergence of a new kind of top tier from Ertz on up, or is this a flash in the pan?
I think you're looking at a new top tier, especially with guys like Travis Kelce. He's kind of getting up there in age. He's still going to get it done, but Lamar Jackson being a mobile quarterback, he likes to move outside the pocket, and he's going to look for that short to intermediate throw. And that's where your tight end comes into play. And that's why Mark Andrews had such an effective year. And kind of the same with the Raiders and Darren Waller. John Gruden made no bones about it. Like, our offense, at least our passing offense, is going to run through Waller. He said that in the preseason, and it actually came to fruition, which, I had my eye on Waller, but it's like some of those guys you don't want to just take that chance on right away, especially because of them being so unknown.
Mm-hmm. My biggest regret of the season was grabbing Hawkinson instead of Waller, man. You're welcome.
Yeah,
that was so disappointing to watch. And I think Kittle, if the Niners stay how they are this season, I think he'll dethrone Kelce. I think he's the new Kelce. He's just just a big bitch. You can't bring him down. Unless you grab his face mask and ride him for 5 yards.
He's awesome, and I hate the 49ers, but he's the most badass player in the NFL right now, and tight end for sure.
To be made, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, speaking of one of those that you just kind of grab and hope, Tanner, I wanted to point out there at number 9 was kind of, I feel like he's your guy, and you've always kind of had a penchant for wanting to pick him up, and this year it kind of worked out for him. Hunter Henry sitting there, number 9.
Yeah, I mean, he finally got it going. I think, I loved him back when he was in college. I'm not going to be like, I watch every game of him, but I do this thing where for some reason I redshirt tight ends like a dipshit, so I redshirted him and he came in, and it's nice to see him. Ebron didn't pay off when I did him, so it's nice to see Henry at least paying off a bit. But I don't know. it's like you say though. After Ertz, it's still I'd argue a crapshoot because he could just next year totally flame out. I hope he continues it, but I think he's got the skill to. It's just a matter of how much they utilize him. But I think he can block, he can run, he can do all of it. So.
Well, and Zach, I'm actually going to ask you. I mean, how much of that was? I mean, I would almost say somebody like Eckler kind of opening it up for him. Obviously, they had Gordon last year, but it was one of those that was more of just a run threat. If you get somebody like Eckler, who is more that passing option, if he is covered in some capacity, does that just automatically go to the tight end and Hunter Henry, or?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. And with Rivers, I think Rivers really drug that team down. I watched a few games, and any ball that was in the air more than 20 yards just started fluttering. And I mean, his arm is shot, if you ask me, which question. No one is. So, but yeah, so those short dump offs to the running back, and the short to intermediate throws to the tight end, and Keenan Allen, because that's kind of his game too. That's where the money's made in the Chargers passing game, and that's why you saw Hunter Henry being very effective until the very end of the year when he just all of a sudden was catching like 2 passes a game and they weren't utilizing him in the red zone. But yeah,
which again, I wouldn't say was his fault, but yeah.
It wasn't. He's talented, and he remained somewhat healthy. I know he got hurt like midway through the year, but when he came back, he was like the tight end 1 for a few weeks. So
right. All right. Well, and we're not going to talk about kicker or defense right here because I feel like those are also just big crapshoots unless there's somebody you guys want to bring up specifically.
Nope. No, I can bitch about defense if you want.
I mean, sure. Go ahead. What do you got?
What else are we doing here?
No. I don't want to do that because then it'll make it all about me. But the thing is, defense. I would make the greatest. Well, I don't want to say the greatest. I would make some good pickups, and I don't know how it happened. I would get a defense that was facing the worst team against defenses, and for some reason, no matter what in our league, it never worked out. And it's return yards. I hate return yards. It killed me. It always killed me in head-to-head matchups because A, I never got them, and B, it seemed like no matter what, I don't care if the team was playing the Kansas City Chiefs, that defense would score 32 points because they had 150 return yards.
Yeah, no, so, I feel like I feel your struggle. I felt a similar struggle this season where I was just playing the matchups, just streaming them like, oh, this makes perfect sense. I'll throw them in there, and they would never work out. And so glad I wasn't the only one.
No, I have a new strategy. I'm just going to pick random teams. I'm going to put a waiver claim in on random defenses and see what happens.
Just kind of hold them for the season.
Yeah, I mean, we all can't be that lucky to have the New England Patriots who played nothing but the Dolphins and the Bengals and the Bills every week for like the first 9 weeks. Jets. Yeah. Assholes.
That's funny. So Tanner, one of the things, and as I'm looking over past seasons, because actually New England did have a top 10 defense last year as well. Is there any relevance or call for looking back to previous seasons? Obviously, we mentioned, I know Russell Wilson is one of those kind of perennial top 10. Is there anybody that stood out that is always consistent? Somebody that if somebody loses them to tenure or whatever, that somebody should target here in the offseason?
Or defense?
Any of the positions.
Oh, any of them. I should have looked closer at like who had guys for how long.
No, don't worry about that. I mean, just guys that you think people should target just based on their consistency in the top 10.
Well, yeah, obviously we already said it. Russell Wilson's pretty much always up there. I think, like Zach said, I think Dak Prescott, I don't think he's the quote-unquote sexiest quarterback, but he seems consistent enough. And then, we can go position by position, but obviously, like Michael Thomas, no question. Julio Jones may be starting to go down. We'll see what happens. But I'd still keep him for sure.
Hasn't
McCaffrey,
Julio...
no question. Ezekiel Elliott, there's definitely. Beyond the top 5s in each, I don't have anyone in particular. I think.
Hasn't Julio always been like a top 10 finisher, even with like how many games did he play this year? Like 14 or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's
he's
still,
great.
Like,
Yeah.
On the other side of that one, I'm going to go back to Odell here because I feel like Zach being in love with him so much, it's one of those that I like to just rub in. It's, as I recall, and that was one that I looked for specifically, in the last 5 years, Odell Beckham has only managed to crack the top 10 like 2 times, and that's it.
Yeah, and a lot of that too is he is injury prone or injury unlucky. I don't even know which one. I know he ends up with a lot of like soft tissue injuries. This year was, I mean, all the Browns aside from like Nick Chubb, it was just a bad year for their offense. Just something didn't click. The offensive line was horrible. The play calling was horrible, and it looked like the team gave up on their coach very early in the season. They turned into a dumpster fire real quick. So, I mean, I'm willing to, give him another shot, another year, because I still contend he is the most talented receiver in the game as far as athletic ability and the catches he can make.
All right. Well, I mean,
and just back to Julio Jones real fast. He was only out of the top 5 for 1 year. So yeah, he's one of the best.
He's one of the best, yeah. I was going to bring up another point on this one. The other one, because I was looking through them, and it's like one of those that I know is just tough, is obviously picking that defense or a kicker that you can get. But, I mean, outside of like Kelsey I don't know if McCaffrey's going to stay at the top because obviously, Tanner, you hope Kamara bounces back. But I feel like that's one of those positions that there's always somebody new, and predicting at least the top, couple of them. I mean, because somebody that's not in the top 10 this year that generally seems to always be, at least in the back of my mind, is the name eludes me. Crap. David Johnson. Outside of his injury.
Don't let me start on that. No, for real, don't get me started. I didn't.
I thought you were elaborate. Okay.
I was waiting for you to get started.
No, it's just, oh, God, that sucks so bad because he is one of those. It's like, God, all the talent in the world, just watching him flounder. I mean, this was his year. He had an offense that wasn't bad. They were playing from behind a lot, but they had a QB who was young. I mean, it would have been the perfect situation. A top 10 QB who was young, who you would think is just going to be dumping off passes. And then it never clicked. I don't know. And, at the beginning of the season, you, Jake, made the argument with him that, like, well, is he an injury guy? Well, I'm officially on your side. He's an injury guy. So I don't know if he'll ever be healthy enough. I don't know if he's got it in him anymore. I've just lost all faith in him, and I loved him.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely an injury that the team was not being super open about with him, because he didn't look the same, and they still kind of trotted him out there to get 16 yards a game. I mean,
dude, which game was it? It was towards the end of the season where they had him. They were shitbirds about it. They had him play one series and sat his ass.
I think it was just one. I think it was just one snap.
You might be right. It might have just been one play. And I just remember because everyone was watching so much, like, are they going to play him? Are they not? Everyone knew there was a kind of an injury thing, like you said. They were being cryptic, but everyone was worried. And then the minute I saw, I was like, he's playing. I gotta put him in. And just one snap. Like, what
yeah. Well, and what's sad about that too is you can say, like I'd turn and say the offensive line is garbage there. But look what Kenyon Drake was able to do at the end of the.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He's got the talent that he shouldn't. It shouldn't matter. At least it'll always matter. But he is. I saw him as a type of player that can rise above something like that. But
but that's just the biggest what if with David Johnson is like you saw what Kenyon Drake was doing at the end of the year. He was pretty sure he was an RB1 for like the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. And had David Johnson been healthy and playing at his peak, like that could have been him.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, but we haven't seen it since 2016, so I've just lost faith now.
Yeah, give up on him.
Yeah, I have. Don't worry.
Another one that, as I was looking through these past couple seasons of top 10, somebody that's obviously not in the top 10 this year was a wide receiver. He was injured for a lot of it as well, was Tyreek. Like, is that...
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I seem to recall he was hurt last year, too, for a little while, wasn't he?
Yeah. And I think that's just the little man syndrome. I mean, he's a small guy. He runs down the field. He takes big hits.
Yeah.
I think they still have him return punts every now and then. It's bound to happen.
Yeah. So are we going to see him top 10 again? Or obviously there's Mecole Hardman and Watkins, and they have a couple other options in there. Is he going to ever come back to the top 10, or was that kind of a...
I'll never bank on an injury happening unless it's someone like the aforementioned Will Fuller or something. But like Tyreek Hill, yeah, if you preface it with, barring injury, yeah, easily he'll be in the top 10 again. He's still young. He's got Mahomes throwing it to him. He can catch 3 passes for 150 yards.
Oh yeah, he's the fastest guy in the NFL as far as I'm concerned. But as for will he avoid injuries, I don't know if I'm as confident in that. And the problem is that offense is just firing too well, and Mahomes will spread the ball around and get it to whoever is open, and they're always going to be covering Hill. So the only way he's getting them is just those, which you love, those great deep passes where he just burned the defense, and they're nowhere near him, and Mahomes can throw it, so he'll throw it to him. But yeah, I don't know. He could do it, but I don't have all this confidence in the world he will, because especially when you look at these other guys that are ahead of him this season. I think that I loved Galladay, but I don't see him being number 5 again, or whatever. But
yeah.
I'll peter off.
No, that's all right. That actually helps me go into my next point. I know, Zach, you had looked into it a little bit, but obviously it is that time of year now that the season is done, and we're looking towards keepers. The dates or anything haven't been set, but some of these teams got to start making moves, right? I know the Dark Knights is, one. Boomer Busters does not have anybody that's at year 3. I believe Sea Chicken Chokers is the same way, where they don't have anybody at year 3. So there's no real, unless they're trying to make a move, somebody like Arthur. Arthur's a good example. He has Hopkins, Fournette, and Evan Engram all at year 3 with us. So, what kind of moves should some of these teams start thinking about? What's a good trade? If you're thinking about somebody like Tyreek, who has that potential of being injury prone, or David Johnson or Fuller, is there value there?
Yeah, it depends. It's a weird year because it's like not a lot of teams have multiple 3-year players left. Mm-hmm. So you have that one 3-year guy, just keep franchise tagging him if you want. But there's a lot of players on rosters right now too who either have really good name recognition to where you could go after one of those tenured guys, mm-hmm. and maybe try and get them from another team, even though you don't necessarily, you don't really need the help, but that they're just going to end up in the draft pool eventually. But yeah, Arthur definitely has the biggest decision to make between the 3 of his, Fournette, Hopkins, and Ingram. Yeah. I think I know I'd go with that one, but
you'd keep Hopkins.
Yeah, I think I'd keep Hopkins.
I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, Fournette it's tempting. He did get a bunch of yards this year. For some reason, couldn't find the end zone. But yeah. So
but he's got Chris Carson now, so he shouldn't have. Yeah,
and he doesn't need him, so he could look to ship Fournette off to a team that does need a running back.
Yeah.
Well, I tried to make something happen with him, I think, at one point, like, towards the end of the season with Hopkins. I was trying to, but he wanted something crazy, like Kamara straight across or something, so I just pretty much shut down. But I would definitely take him. Arthur, if you're listening.
Well, I was looking through it, and I saw something that would be intriguing. I would honestly hope it wouldn't happen, because I don't believe in trading with the champ, even though that was me last year, and I totally stole Michael Thomas. That being said, with those 3, I think maybe not a fair trade. Maybe you'd have to involve some draft picks, but I know has Kelsey, because he's going to keep McCaffrey. Right. Kelsey's a pretty hot commodity. Who wouldn't want the 1 or 2 tight end in the league? If Arthur really wanted to, he could keep Fournette, trade a combination of Hopkins and Ingram to Jake for Kelsey, and then maybe, I don't know, AJ Green. I know Jake wouldn't be giving up Cooper Kupp, And then, I don't throw in some draft picks to make it balance out a little bit. Maybe Jake gives up a second and Arthur gives up a later round one, but that one would make sense to me. Actually, I don't know if Jake would want to do that. I mean, who wouldn't want DeAndre Hopkins and then Ingram filling in for Kelsey?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would trust Ingram's longevity because I feel like he is oft injured. He's another one of those. But, I mean, with tight end, you can always kind of crapshoot most of the bottom half. That is intriguing, though. I do, for the record, I am interested in moving Cooper Kupp if somebody has the right price. But, I mean, you're absolutely right. Obviously, Kelsey is one that I feel like I should move on from. But, I mean, if I'm going to jump over to another team, obviously somebody like I mean, looking at this and projecting right now, two of the top teams, based on keepers, if you guys pick who I think you're going to pick, Boomer Busters and Threat Level Midnight. And I'm just going to say, just name recognition-wise, Threat Level Midnight, if you walk into next season with Jackson, Thomas, Odell, Dalvin Cook, and Darren Waller, that's a pretty good stack to start next season. Then on the other side with Boomer Busters, there's Mahomes, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Mark Andrews, and obviously he can either go Marlon Mack, who always seems to have a workload, or, I mean, Amari Cooper, Emmanuel Sanders, just because they are point grabbers. But
what about Sony Michel? I love to watch him flame out. Sorry.
Yeah, me too. He's a Patriot.
Well, true. Yeah, but I like James White way better. I said that in our first podcast, as I recall. But yeah,
the name that I didn't mention that seems to be obviously he's going to the Super Bowl is Mostert. He's right there too. That could be in consideration just based. I mean, obviously it's always a crapshoot for that backfield, but who knows what happens in the offseason. But between Boomer Busters and Threat Level Midnight, just looking at what your potential keepers could be, those are pretty good stacks.
You pretty much mentioned my keepers. I mean, it's probably no secret looking at my roster. The only wild card is Melvin Gordon. Right. I mean, but then again, my only option is to franchise him over Dalvin Cook, and I don't feel very comfortable doing that. No. So.
But I mean, you have
so he is on the trade block. Everybody,
you also have Mixon, Murray, Damian Harris, who's the other New England running backs, and Sony Michel is obviously probably going to bust. And you have Mecole Hardman based on the Tyreek history. I mean, you obviously have that sixth spot that you're still thinking about, but there is this strong potential where you're looking to go into next season as a contender.
I'm trying. That's the goal, right?
Yeah. Well, and I'll even throw in Michael Gallup. I mean. Because Cooper did not look as good this season, he could very quickly become the wide receiver one there.
Well, I don't know if you guys listened to the podcast that I had to do solo, but those were Hardman and Gallup were names that I brought up as people to just throw on the back end of your roster just to keep them. So, if there's a freak accident in the off season where Michael Thomas tore his Achilles playing a pickup basketball game, it's like, well, I guess I could probably keep Gallup now, or Mecole Hardman, or
There's much worse backups for sure.
Yeah, and that was my strategy with that. But I mean, my keepers are pretty much set. When one thing you brought up, Raheem Mostert, Jake. Mm-hmm. He's someone who I put in this category of players that you could probably try to sell high on. If Raheem Mostert goes into the Super Bowl and scores 3 touchdowns or 4 touchdowns like he did against the Packers in the NFC Championship,
and Breida will have another cold, so yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But Mostert, say he goes off again, Deshaun can turn that around into a high draft pick or trade him for someone that is on the cusp of being one of those, or is one of those 3-year players that another team is going to have to get rid of.
Yeah. Well, but how are Emmanuel Sanders and Marlon Mack not in this conversation too? Those would be tough ones to let go of, in my view.
I don't think. Well, I think he would keep Marlon Mack. But
I mentioned both of them, those guys, for the record. I did mention them briefly.
You did.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like. No, I feel like with either one of them, because I feel like with Emmanuel Sanders' age is kind of the question. Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe he goes out on a high note if they win the Super Bowl. But then Marlon Mack is one where obviously who knows what they're going to do at quarterback. And I feel like, I'm just going to kind of juxtapose it with another team here. A team that kind of has some of those same, hey, what's going to happen is the Flying Dutchman. Who knows what happens with Jameis Winston? Is he going to stay in Tampa, or is he going to, are they going to cut him loose? Tyreek Hill obviously has that. We talked injury. Parker, who knows who's going to be throwing him the ball? Obviously he keeps Julio, but then where does he go from there? Does he keep Metcalf? He has Johnson. He has Kenyon Drake. But then
how does he always have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver? He always does. I don't get it.
No, he does. But go ahead, Zach.
I don't know what it is. That is true, and two of his players, the two wide receivers that you just brought up. Well, actually, I don't think you mentioned Chark, but he has DJ Chark too, along with Devontae Parker. Those are
no. He got rid of Parker, and now he's got Juju. But
no, Devontae Parker. Not.
Oh, sorry. I was Devontae.
You were thinking Devontae. Yeah.
My bad. Sorry.
No, but you're right. He has DJ Chark. I didn't mention him or Juju, but yeah, you're right. He has both those wide receivers as well.
And those are two players, again, in that same category with Raheem Mostert that you can sell high on. Because Parker, he's been in the league, 5 years now, and he finally broke out. Are you going to trust him to break, especially now that he's staying in Miami? You don't know what their quarterback situation is going to be.
I don't care. I have full faith in Devontae Parker now. He would be my first pick off the board if he happens to let him go. I'm just saying it now.
Well, okay. Well, how about this, Kurt? If you're listening, work a trade with Devontae Parker for Canada because
I'm right.
I would sell high on him. I would sell so high on Devontae Parker and DJ Chark. Yeah. Similar situation. The quarterback, you don't know what they're going to do. And see, I would honestly be more interested in him because he's only a second-year player and he broke out. Right. Devontae Parker's been in the league for 4 or 5 years, and he finally broke out. Oh, you know what's funny about that, too? Wasn't this his contract year? Funny how that shit works out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I won't agree with you on that. That's why he broke out. I think Miami's just a dumpster fire, and he just finally was able to make gold happen out of it. But that's why I think he's that type of player. He can play on a shitty team and still somehow end up top 10. And I love it. So again, he's got skill. So
hit up Kurt and make an offer for Devontae Parker. If I owned Parker, I would be all over getting rid of him. Not that I think he's bad. He will probably perform next year. It's just these are guys that you can sell high on because, like you said, he's only got one tenured guy, and that's Tyreek Hill.
Which, again, even though I was crapping on Tyreek Hill earlier, I wouldn't drop him either. If he was on my he'd be one of my keepers, so, yeah.
So with that embarrassment of riches at wide receiver, why not flip Devontae Parker into a solid running back? Or maybe just get there you go. Devontae Parker for Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, right.
David Johnson?
Done.
Yeah, I'd probably do that too.
All right, so the last two teams that I'm going to point out just kind of in these 10 years, people that I feel like should be doing moves. Obviously, I could go into the fact that Tanner's kept Drew Brees for, he's been 6 seasons or something like that. You're obviously getting rid of him. Yeah, no, Tanner, you're going to turn it into whatever. You're going to be out of toilet bowl next year. Mickey Mania has, Chubb and Kittle and whatever. She'll be fine. I feel like Chicken Chokers. He was a point away from making the playoffs. He'll do just fine as well. Two I am going to bring up, though, are Solania. Obviously he has Hopkins, Fournette, and Ingram. We already talked about that a little bit. But outside of those three, Carson, Prescott, Cousins, Sutton, Lynn. I would
say Sutton. Sutton's worth noting, I think he's just got a consistent upward trajectory. I think Denver's going to look better this next year if they can get the QB situation figured out. So he's one that I'm pretty hot on. I like Sutton a lot. So
yeah.
Well,
and that goes hand in hand with Lindsey as well, because obviously he's has him.
Yeah.
But I feel like some of those names, like Zach, you keep mentioning, is just kind of flip it to somebody. Fournette is obviously that good example, but he does have both Cousins and Prescott. Obviously, I don't recommend keeping 2 quarterbacks, but it's been done before.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like doing it, and it sucks because I won't be able. I have 2 really good quarterbacks on my team. I'm obviously going to have to get rid of one of them, being Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I wonder which one.
2 quarterbacks. Yeah, no secret there. But yeah, I don't like keeping 2 quarterbacks. Some people do. If they're your best players, then what are you going to do? I mean, yeah, I don't know. If I were him, I'd just get rid of Cousins. I think Prescott's the far superior quarterback. But
sure, I'd go that route too. But last team, and maybe Tanner, you can. I don't know. I feel bad for your dad. He missed the the playoffs by a point. There was a stat correction right at the end of the year to get him. I mean, oh man, that is some terrible luck. But
dude, when he texted me about that was so funny. I didn't either because I said that he was just like, "Oh man, this is horrible. Have you looked at it?" I was like, "Oh, it must be a glitch." He's like, "No, there was a stat correction." I was like, "Oh shit.
Yeah, no, it was a sack or something like that wasn't constituted as a sack." And then like 2 days later, they said, "Oh, wait a second, that's 2 more points for Eli. He beat him by a point, and so technically Cass is 10th. He'll get punishment here soon."
And I can't chalk it up to anything more than bad luck because I mean he has the most like within a slim margin losses out of anyone in the entire season, right? I feel like I went week by week and he had weeks where it was half a point or something. It was ridiculous how many he was so close, and it was just because of the matchup he just came in like that 1 point short.
Well, and I feel like it's just terrible for him too because he's outscored. I mean, even Deshaun, who got second, he outscored him. He outscored Tanner, Eli, and Flying Dutchman, and he was a point behind Chubbawamba. It was rough, but I feel like the worst part is looking at Eli's roster. I mean, he has Fitzpatrick.
That's bad for everybody.
Landry, Thielen, Washington, Ertz, Laird. He has Patrick Laird. That was in his starting lineup. Like, how... I don't know. I feel, and his team, just looking at that, if I'm going to make an early prediction, I'm sorry, Eli's going to be in the toilet bowl again next year.
But he's got Derrick Henry.
I was going to say, he drafted well. He got Derrick Henry in the second round last year. And he took, who'd he take in the first? Son of a gun. Sorry for the language, everybody. Oh. Yeah, he took somebody in the first, and it ended up working out well for him. But yeah, I don't know. You can always draft and build your team, but if we're gonna go by the history of the owner, he's gonna suck ass again.
That's funny. Eli picked which
I know. I'm looking at. I'm trying to find it here. Draft results. Sorry.
No, he picked Derrick Henry.
That's what I thought. I thought that was his first. Yeah.
Oh, did he take him in the first?
He did. He took him in the first, and then Jordan Howard. Because the thing, and I feel like Tanner, your dad is going to probably correct it this year. He's probably going to pick a 0 pick that he will demolish at.
Yeah, I think at this point it's fair. He gave the fair one and he lost. So now if he picks one that he knows we can't win, hey, okay, I won't fault him for it.
Hey, since he will be hopefully not having had surgery recently, I would love to rematch him at that speed bag. But
I think he would love that too. So yeah,
that would be just for pride, though. All right, guys, let's
just a little dick measuring. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, is there anything else you guys want to throw on here? I feel like that was a pretty good recap overall. There's a lot of good details. Or what else you got?
I bloviated enough. I'm good.
I'll make it real quick because I did have another category of players that you could probably try and flip in a trade. There are more players with name recognition, so you can try and pass it off to maybe someone who isn't keeping up with what's really going on in the NFL. So guys like T.Y. Hilton on Tanner's team, I feel like if you can turn that into something, try and do that. Jake with A.J. Green, Aaron Rodgers, Haley's team. Julian Edelman, I feel like eventually he's going to start going downhill, especially if Tom Brady isn't going to be there this year, which I think he will be, but you never know. Devontae Freeman on Sean's team. These are all names that we recognize and we know have done well in the past. Just try and throw a random, throw something against the wall, see if you can get something for him. And for me, Melvin Gordon, even though if I could, I would keep Melvin Gordon. I think he's still a great running back and he has a lot of talent. But I got to get rid of him. and he is a name. Everybody knows who Melvin Gordon is in fantasy football, so hopefully I can get more for him than what I should get, but probably not, and I'll probably just end up having to cut him. So.
All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you staying on and chatting with me. And again, there will be a couple attachments with this one, along with the final rosters, and obviously, hopefully, get some dates for you here soon. Otherwise, gentlemen, thanks so much for chatting here.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time.